The psychology behind your name can reveal a great deal of the critical and constructive insights on how the imprint of your impact will be felt on the world. Sharon Wyeth has devoted her career to studying the science and significance behind your name. She's an internationally known name expert who says you can determine a person's strengths, challenges, and purpose in life by deciphering their name. She created Neimology, the science of the study of the placement of the letters in a name. She joined me this week to tell me more about the practice and how what's in your name can reveal everything you need to know about your personality, your emotions, and how you will impact the rest of the world. I'm Kevin McShane. Let's this conversation. Wyeth began our discussion by discussing the unique properties and significance behind every individual name.
Well, I love reading somebody's name for them because I always start off with, why did your soul pick these two people to be your parents or to give you birth? What was your soul planning? And I think it's very important that we honor our choices, knowing that the soul has chosen their parents. And when we don't like our choice, we're not honoring ourselves or our parents. And how we honor our parents is we see them for who they really are. And then we copy the good attributes and we make sure we don't copy the other attributes. Okay, but there's certain things that we wouldn't be or we wouldn't have been exposed to if we didn't have those two people as our parents. So that's how every reading starts. And then I go through the strengths that are in somebody's name. And then I go through the 7 component parts of what the soul chose to learn and experience while it was here. And then that overarching umbrella of why somebody's here. So it's really clear. And Kevin, the coolest thing is that all the comments I get, I go, oh, how could you know? How could you know? And I thought, I know how to interpret a name, and it's sitting right there. The name is the blueprint. It even gives you the timing of where your focus is going to be every year of your life. And then the other beauty is that you can compare two people's names and see how they can get along better or what's irritating the other person. So you're not changing somebody's personality. You just change how you go about something. For an example, Kevin, in your name, you are a fabulous leader. And it literally says that because the K's and the C's, the names that start with those 2 letters, there are natural leaders out there. They love to lead. But the K followed by the E makes you also have compassion when you're leading. So when you lead, everybody benefits. The KE is the strongest combination for leaders that everybody benefits when they work for a KE.
Well, thank you. I didn't know that. I learned something new today, so thanks for that. And I always like to lead by example, so that's great to know. And tell me, I know you also work with HR departments and people in business to help narrow down their candidates to get the best to judge people the best way they know how. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about that.
Well, what happens is that the companies that have hired me, they literally give me the job description and they give me the list of candidates. And so from the job description tells me what qualities I'm looking for. And they also tell me who they're going to work with or who they're going to report to, because we want to make sure that they're going to be able to get along and not clash. And so then I look at all the names. And when I was tested over a 6-month time period by a very large company, they didn't say anything for 4.5 months. You know, they gave me everything once we were online because he wanted to make sure I wasn't looking anything up ahead of time. But I was teaching full time at the same time. I didn't have time to look something up ahead of time, you know. So he'd give me the job description and the list of candidates while we were on the phone. And I would look at them and then I'd say, okay, here's your number one, here's your number two. And then he'd give me the next one. There was no feedback for 4.5 months. And at that mark, he finally said, okay, I have a question. He said, for 4.5 months, you've been hitting our number one and our number two after we've looked at the resumes, we've interviewed the candidates, we've called all the references, and this is our conclusion. This is a very expensive process. And he says, and in 10 to 15 minutes, you're giving me the same ones. But in this case, our number one and two is your number two and one. They're backwards. So why? So I said, well, you'd probably be happy with either one, but this is the reason I chose this one over the other one. And he said, you know, nobody would tell us that when we called for a reference. That's not something we generally share. And we wouldn't figure that out for ourselves for a year. You know, why would you put him in number two? And he said, you've been so accurate. We're going to go for your suggestion over our suggestion. So anyway, that's how accurate it is. And when I've asked the companies that have employed me more than 5 years, a few months ago, we said, what's the retention rate of the ones that we have recommended? And each of the companies had over a 90% retention rate. And, you know, that's where companies lose money, is when they have to retrain and start again and interview and everything. So that's cool. And the other thing with HR is when they're having personnel problems, they'll call me in and then I'll work with the people by looking at their names and seeing what needs to shift to make everybody happy so that they want to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I work with the companies to help employ individuals with disabilities, and one of the benefits of doing that is that their turnover costs are low, and they want to prove they can do the job. Absolutely. So we share that in common as well. And I also know that you help people try to change their names of their businesses where they want sort of a fresh start, and you also help to come up with names for products too. So you're a naturally creative person. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about that process in the sense of fulfillment that you get out of it as well.
Well, first, Kevin, it's very easy. I need a lot of input from the person whose business is going to be. I ask them for 10 attributes that they want everybody to feel or sense or know the minute they hear the name. And then I want 10 attributes of the potential clients that they're attempting to create that they want to serve. You know, who do you want to serve? And then I say, and what exactly is your business going to offer? What service, you know, what product, what are you going to do? So I take those 3 pieces of information. So when I'm creating a name, that it's going to meet all those conditions. And I love the fact, Kevin, that you help people with disabilities, because I have a niece that has Down syndrome, and she's been on television a lot and is very active. And what they're always trying to teach my sister and my niece is that we're going to focus on somebody's abilities versus their disabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I was born with cerebral palsy, so this is a personal mission for me to promote equality in short, and equity when it comes to employment for sure. But I'm also curious, Sharon, to ask you, what do you think are the qualities of a great communicator?
A great communicator is someone who can express their ideas in simplistic points of view, that's willing to listen to the other person and incorporate their ideas into their own ideas, and to make sure that there's no judgment when there's communication.
And I know that part of the work that you do is writing some great books. So I'm wondering, overall, where does your passion for writing come from? And when you write a book, what are you hoping the overall message is as well?
Well, when I'm writing the book so far is to teach this system of Neimology Science that I have created, because it's a very simplistic way of getting a ton of information. It's very easy to learn. There's other things like the Myers-Briggs test for personalities. There's a lot of other tests out there, but that person is assessing themselves. And some people know how to tweak or what kind of answers being looked for, where this one is totally objective and anybody can do it instantaneously. And I just think it's wonderful to be able to see a person for who they really are. And everyone who has studied this system with me has reported back to me, 100% have reported back that, I've stopped judging anybody and I've really become into acceptance, because I realize when I look at their name and their behaviors that everyone has gifts and everyone has challenges, and they're not doing something to irritate me, type of thing. And instead you can have compassion for what that soul is choosing to experience in this lifetime.
Tell me about your Neimology system and sort of the nuts and bolts and how it works. I'm curious.
So it literally works by the placement of the letters in the name. It's the only system out there that works this way. There's no math involved. It's very, very different than numerology, because people ask me that all the time. And so the first name is the essence of who you are. The middle name is how you shift when you're under stress. If you don't have a middle name, then what you see in the first name is what you always get. And the last name is your environmental influence. So you have your nature in your first name and your nurturing in the last name. And then within the first name, the first letter is the first impression of people that they get of you. The first vowel in the first name is your communication style, your learning style, what kind of gifts you like, how you show love, how you receive love, all kinds of things are in that first vowel. And then the last letter in your first name, like yours, Kevin, is an N, and that just says that you're very good with details and you have a really good memory.
Well,
okay? And that's the lasting impression somebody will have of somebody.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One of my former bosses, I used to work at the YMCA, and our desk was right next to each other, and she always said, if she had to remember something, she would tell me, because she told me I had a memory that would remember anything. So I appreciate that. So
yes, yeah, and it's right there in your name. And so people look for that. I love the N's, because N's always is one of the ways that signifies memory. And when it's the last letter of the first name, I always say it's the anal retentive to the details, where we can drive everybody else nuts with them.
Well, I being a journalist, I'm obsessed with details and getting everything accurate. So you're right about that for sure. And tell me, I'm curious, Sharon, if you have an opinion on whether there's something as simple as a good or bad name. I'm curious. Can we decipher through that or not?
Yes. Because everyone has challenges in their name. Every single person out there, okay, has challenges in their name. A good name also has the gifts that are going to help the person overcome or experience from and learn from those challenges. What I consider a harsh name is one when you look at the challenges and they don't have the gifts in the name that will help them overcome those challenges. So then I look at that as a very challenging name. Not that any name is bad, because we're all here to learn and have experiences, but that those lives are a lot more difficult than the lives that are balanced with that you have the attributes that are going to help you solve the challenges in the name.
When you work with people or companies, I'm curious, is there one thing or a couple of things that they're most surprised to learn about the process or how you go through what you do? I'm curious.
Well, I think they're surprised at how quickly you can have an honest assessment of somebody, and their motivations and how they feel and why they do what they do. But I think even more surprising is that the solutions are always in the name, so that you're not ever left with, oh, great, so now I have this challenge and what do I do? So the easiest way to solve any kind of challenge is also sitting right there in the name.
Yeah, and tell me, Sharon, I'm curious, for you, what's the best aspect of your job?
I get to assist people in recognizing more of their own attributes and acknowledging for them those things that they already know about themselves, but also to tweak it a little bit And so, like, for an example, if somebody had clutter in their name, to say to them, this is why you need clutter. Because clutter, for some, if they have the letter D in their name somewhere, that's the clutter letter. And for them, they need clutter, like the key to the ignition of the car starts the car, and clutter is the ignition to the brain that starts the brain thinking. And so once they realize that, they don't need as much clutter. They just need to go to look at the clutter when the brain's not working for them, because it starts it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious, for you personally, I'm wondering if you have a motto that you live your life by, or a philosophy that you adopt.
Well, I happen to believe that no one is better than somebody else and no one is less than somebody else. So my motto is, we're all in this together, and together we thrive.
And I'm also curious, where did your passion for studying names and sort of the alphabet come from? Why are you so passionate about this one?
Well, I grew up in a household at the beginning of 8th grade. My diary starts with, everybody hates me and it's okay because I can hate them more. And so I started reading the Bible every night. And I said, I'm going to finish this Bible in 1 year. I figured out how many pages, how many days left once I earned my Bible, because there wasn't one around the house. And so I divided it up, and I made sure I was very diligent at reading that every night. And then I decided, that was in 8th grade, and I decided in 9th grade I'd do the same thing for the Bhagavad Gita. And then in 10th grade it was the Book of Mormon. And in 11th grade, every year I picked a large book that was philosophical to go through the major religions. And so at that time, as I was reading, I just fell in love with the main characters and how everybody was striving to do their best. And I thought, there is joy in this world. There can be compassion and love in this world, which I had not been experiencing up until then. And so I wanted to make sure that other people could have an easier life or a more understanding life. And so that compassion to be kind grew in me, starting literally in 8th grade. And by 9th grade, here in 8th grade, everybody hated me. Well, I was sour and not friendly. But by 9th grade, I got elected to a student government office. So there'd been a lot of change and a lot of growth in that amount of time. And then I started tutoring math that I was very good at for the people that weren't. And, you get fired when you're a good tutor, because after a while, they don't need you anymore. But I loved seeing other people learn. And so I became a teacher, and I actually started teaching. I had my teaching credential at age of 20. I went through school as fast as I could. And then I watched how people treated each other in the classroom. And starting as I was doing the seating chart in my 7th year of teaching, I realized that there was patterns or something to names. And so I thought, this is a tool from what I was seeing that could help people, because I saw patterns in the names, just like I see patterns in math. And so I kept developing it. It took me 15 years to figure out all the patterns that I have. And then I went and tested it in 70 countries. Now, I got invited to those countries because I was already speaking on spiritual topics. So I simply said, while I'm there, can I also speak on names? And that's how it started, and that's how it grew. And I always thought, if I'm completely out of the water, that somebody of all these thousands of people I was presenting spiritual topics to, that I then presented name topics to, would tell me I was all washed up. But as more and more people have experienced it, they went, oh my gosh, the accuracy is unreal. And so the passion is to realize that we're all here to assist one another, and we're all here to help enjoy life. So I don't believe that God said, oh, look, I'm going to punish all of you and send you to earth, and it's going to be miserable, but you're tough, you can do it. I don't believe that. I do believe that he created a Garden of Eden, and then sometimes we co-create distortions with other people, and that's what makes it not a Garden of Eden. So with a name, you see the clarity to get out of the distortion, so then life just gets better. And that's where my passion is to watch people become happier.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to finally ask you about, when you look at the totality of your life, where do you think you want your biggest imprint of impact to be made, or how do you want your overall personal or professional legacy to be defined?
That's a wonderful question. With all the interviews I've done, Kevin, no one has asked me that. That is a fabulous question. And I think my legacy would be the creator of Neimology Science, which is a fabulous tool that assists us in knowing ourselves better and recognizing who the other people are more clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, tell me, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
The easiest way is through one of my websites. I have two. So one of them is called Know the Name. So if somebody's not where they're able to write it down, they can just remember when they get home that, oh, they needed to know the name of that website. And that was it, knowthename.com. And the other one is I'm often referred to as the Name Lady. And so thenamelady.com. Either one will get you in contact with me.
Fantastic. Well, I have to tell you, I took a whole bunch of notes and I filled up a full notepad during our conversation. So I really appreciate the education you gave me on the science of a name and sort of giving me some insight in your personal and professional life. Your time on my behalf and work in this space are most appreciated, Sharon, and I want to thank you for being here this morning.
It is my joy, Kevin, and I love the interviews that you do. I have watched quite a few of them, and you do such a fine job getting to the meat of everything in a short period of time, and that's incredible.